Right now, the internet's decided that Satan are either unbeatable or the end of competitive 40K as we know it. And honestly, neither of those reactions are going to help you win any games. So, what's actually changed is really simple. The Satan got a slight glow up, and most players are responding very emotionally instead of strategically. And when I say most, I'm not talking about a lot of people on the internet. I know most of you guys are actually really cool, level headed people who will love the critical thinking that is involved in Warhammer 40,000. But people are panicking. Some of them are copying bad tech or writing this matchup off entirely without ever stopping to understand what the problem they're actually facing is in terms of the Satan. But that's not how this channel works. No, 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 no. This is a solutions-oriented channel, and I'm not here to complain about the meta or wait for nerfs. I'm here to teach you how to think your way through the new problems that are going to be presented, and I promise you there will be new problems in the future as well. So there's always going to be new problems when the game changes. And because the armies and the units are always changing, the skill that doesn't change is your decision making and your critical thought skill. So I'm going to teach you how to go through this. So in today's video, I'm breaking down what the different Satan really do, why they feel oppressive on the table, and I admit they can feel oppressive, and more importantly, how to approach them systematically. Not just what to do, but how to analyze threats, manage your resources, and make the decisions that will let you beat these Satan and other future problems consistently. If you want to panic takes, this is not the place for that. But if you want clear thinking and practical solutions to a problem in the meta, stick with me because Satan are a problem you can solve. And by the end of this video, you're going to be on the right path to knowing how to do it. So let's get right on into this video. I'm looking forward to it. Let's crump on. First thing that we got to do is we got to understand Necrons as a whole, because the Satan are really just a incarnation of the Necron threat that we're facing when we play the battlefield. So what do Necrons really have? And trust me, I'm going to go through every single Satan data sheet today. You're going to get as much as you could possibly desire out of the Satan knowledge, but we got to start here, okay? Necrons in general give us powerful data sheets that heal. Right off the bat, that tells us something really, really important. This is not an army that we split fire against, because if you leave something alive, it will just heal back up to full. You cannot do chip damage to Necrons. Necrons as a whole have moderate damage output. Now, of course, they have their combinations like every single army in the game does, but their damage output really isn't what gets them across the finish line. They do have certain access to extreme OC. So, for example, you guys have all played the 20-man Necron Warrior Blob with OC2 and then the +1 OC from the Catacomb Command Barge. They do have access to very high OC. They have generally high toughness and saves, including invulnerable saves that heal. And then they have like Fiona Pains mixed in. So anyone who's ever tried to kill a Wraith brick or, smashing their head through that brick wall, you know what I'm talking about. They have very, very powerful saves with Fiona Pains mixed in and the ability to heal. They've got generally lower leadership, but, characters are all leadership 6, and they have Satan. Now, what's really, really interesting is what a Satan is a model that is very challenging to kill and has a Fiona Pain, has the invulnerable save, has high toughness, and it heals. That's what it is. So let's break down all of the paths that we have to understand about freaking Necrons. Let's talk about reanimation first. Reanimation happens in the command phase after Battle Shock. So this is the faction rule for the Necrons. In the command step, every single unit in their entire army is going to heal D3 wounds. So this is what we're talking about when they say that we're healing. So there's really no point in causing chip damage to your Necron players because they're just going to heal it back anyway. Every single detachment has a way of activating this reanimation protocols with a stratagem in addition to their normal command phase D3 mortal wounds or D3 wounds that they heal. Reanimators, which is a specific unit, allow you to roll an additional D3 when you're within range of them. So if you're within 3 inches of the reanimator, well, now you're healing 2 D3 wounds on your reanimations. And if you use a strat on them, you'll heal an additional 2 D3. When you have certain characters that they can allow you to reanimate again once per game. So like your overlords or your catacomb command barges, they can have a resurrection orb, which can proc this healing ability again. And then certain characters like your technomancer can even heal models. So what I'm telling you is I just really, really need to hammer in this concept that we don't do chip damage. When we decide to annihilate a unit in Necrons, we annihilate the unit, and that's how we deal with it. When you just reduce it, you're really not doing much in Necrons at all. All right, now, what are the units that have traditionally been the problems for the Necrons? And I'm going to explain why they're the problems and why now everyone's worried about the Satan and why you really shouldn't be worried about them the way you are probably worried about them. So the Silent King, this guy, 440-ish point model, you can give him -1 damage in Star Shatter Arsenal. That makes him a 26 wound model with a 2-up armor save and a 4-up invulnerable save, and a 6-up Feel No Pain if you have a Tomb Spider nearby him, with -1 damage. He also will have like your OC 6, 8 with the 2 Triarch Stalkers. This is a model that has been traditionally a big problem. Then we have things like Wraiths with our Technomancers. These guys have 4 wounds each, a 4-up invulnerable save, a 5-up Feel No Pain, OC 2 each, high OC, great invulnerable save, high toughness. Their toughness is like 6 with a 4-up, 5-up. There are very, very few things in the entire game that can actually one-tap this Wraith brick. 20 Warriors with Orokin, which is 20 wounds, 26 if you include the Crypto Thralls, with a 4-up invulnerable save, OC2, sometimes 3. They're going to have a Ghost Arc, so they're going to be reanimating multiple times, and there's going to be a reanimator nearby, so they can be reanimating like 6d3 wounds every single turn, basically. It is a ton. And then finally, we get to the Satan. Now, one of the really interesting things about the Satan is they're kind of a blend of all of these with one fatal flaw that the other units do not have, right? Now, what do we know about these 3 units, the Silent King, the Race, and the 20 Warriors? And next slide, we're getting into how to actually handle the Satanic precisely. So just stick with me for this one because you have to understand this aspect if you're going to feel competent with dealing with the Satan. Well, what we realize when we look at the Silent King with -1 damage and 26 wounds, 2-up, 4-up, 6-up, and then he heals, or the Race or the Warrior Blobs, these are what I like to refer to as a brick freaking wall. There's a lot of ways to get around a brick wall, but the dumbest way possible is to smash your head into that brick wall repeatedly. These are units that are specifically designed to not be one-tapped or destroyed in one activation by any unit in the game. That's what they're designed to do, and they're pretty close to fulfilling it. Now, all these units, yes, there is something out there that can do it, but they're pretty dang close to being properly designed to the point where it's like, yeah, you actually can't kill these in one activation. And if you can't kill it in one activation, don't be frustrated when you can't kill it in one activation. See what I'm saying? All right, so now let's actually get into the Satan themselves, and we're going to talk about how to deal with them. So I had actually a really, really big client, a really, really good client who I really appreciate, who was talking to me about the Dark Angels list. So my Dark Angels list currently, if you guys haven't seen, I've been taking a few GTs with it. It's awesome. And he was asking me, he's like, hey, so we really need to start looking at changing our list so that we can handle these Satan. And in my brain, I was immediately asking, but why would you change the list? He goes, well, we have to kill the Satan. And my question for that particular list is, do I actually have to kill the Satan? Now, some armies do have to be able to kill Satan. Some armies don't. But what we have to understand here, guys, is we have to understand that when we're dealing with Satan, what is the problem the Satan are presenting you with that actually needs to be solved? That's the question. Because when we look at your typical Satan, they're all going to have anywhere between move 8 and move 10, toughness 11, 3-up armor save, 4-up invulnerable save, 5-up Feel No Pain, -1 damage, wounds 16, and then they're going to have OC 4. Now, like we were talking about on the other slide, these things are designed to not be killed in one activation, and they're very, very good at not being killed in one activation. As a matter of fact, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 units in the game that can actually, maybe 4 to 5 units total, actually, when I really get into it, that can actually do it. Perhaps a 3-man squad of Death Shroud with the Lord of Contagion in Champions of Contagion, because they're getting like their crits on 5s with both lethal and lance with full rerolls to hit, full rerolls to wound into a Satan. I think that unit probably does it. I think the math is like maybe a 49% chance of it. You've got Beast Snagas out of the Orcs when you're in the Wa and within 12 inches of Gaz. That unit with full rerolls to hit and crits on 5s that gives you both lethals and sustained, assuming you're in Warhorde, that will kill a Satan. Gaz's crew, that will kill a Satan. Of course, that's a 400 plus point unit, but regardless. So there are some units that actually can one-tap Satan. And if you're playing an army such as the World Eaters or such as the Orcs or such as the Death Guard, and you have access to one of these units, Godspeed, more power to you. Go kill those Satan. Go eat them on up. Now, every army in the game, though, actually has the ability to kill a Satan, but not every army has the ability to one-shot a Satan. And that's the first thing that you need to get through your head. If you actually have to kill a Satan, which, by the way, you don't necessarily need to kill Satan. If you have to kill Satan, the first thing that you got to recognize is it's going to be a combo. It's just going to be a combination, right? But let's go ahead and identify what these Satan do, and then we'll talk about some more strategies for handling them, okay? So let's look at the Nightbringer first. The Nightbringer is a 315-point unit. He's got a relatively decent shooting attack. It's got range 18, D3 shots. hits on 2s, strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 3 damage. Not bad damage, actually. Pretty solid, if you ask me. Then in his melee, he's got 6 attacks, strength 14, AP 4, D6 plus 2 attacks. So basically, he's like a bad Angron when it comes to melee. And then his sweep attack is quite good. It's 14 attacks at strength 8, AP 2, damage 2. It's very good against your marine style meta. Not so good against anything that has like -1 damage, things like Deathwing Knights, things like Redemptor Dreadnoughts, stuff like that. But of course, if he's going into your Redemptor Dreadnoughts or your Deathwing Knights, he's probably going to be doing his strike profile for them. Then he has the Drain Life ability, which is at the end of the fight phase, roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of the model, and on a 4-up, you suffer d3 mortal wounds. Totally reasonably solid ability that has been present all freaking edition. Now, when we look at this profile, what is the weakness that we see? For me, my eyes automatically zero in onto that OC4. This is a 315-point unit or a 345-point unit if you're running them in the Pantheon of Woe detachment. That's the detachment where it's made specifically for the Satan, and he does get more interesting in that detachment because he does get the advance and charge ability. And if I failed to mention it, by the way, everybody, Satan, yes, they all get faster and they all have deep strike now, so it's easier to deliver them. But let's start breaking down these problems one by one. Okay. What is his melee profile? Is it a problem? Is this anything that you haven't seen before? No. Everything that you're seeing in his melee profiles, you have seen before. You've seen Primarchs, you've seen big greater demons, you've seen all sorts of things in this game that have that melee profile or better. So the melee profile isn't necessarily the problem. Then we go, okay, is the speed, is the deliverability a problem? Well, we've seen things that move 10 inches and that are monsters. Like actually basically every single monster moves 10 inches. It does have fly, but the reality is it's still a monster, which means it can't move through terrain. So it definitely has predefined movement lanes where it has to move. So we can predict where it will move. Okay, so its movement really isn't that big a deal. What about the fact that it's got deep strike? Well, when you play Warhammer 40,000, you screen. And if you don't screen, you probably lose a lot of games of Warhammer 40,000. So I'm assuming that you screen. So the fact that you're going to have to screen against Satans and deep striking, rapid ingressing, and stuff like that is literally nothing new. It is just simply playing good, solid Warhammer. So you have to screen, but you get to predict where they're going to move through the battlefield. And their melee really is not anything you haven't seen before, and it's nothing that you can't handle, right? Of course, there's certain targets that you don't want the Satan to necessarily go into, but the reality is if you were going into something that you're prepared to handle, like in my example, if I'm playing my Dark Angels, I don't care if he charges Deathwing Knights because he's going to kill 1, maybe 2, and then I'm going to out-OC him, and he's not going to score primary. Or if he's going to be going into even Blade Guard Veterans, right? So if he goes into Blade Guard Veterans and he does his strike profile, at best, he's going to be killing 3. But the reality is he's going to miss one of his hit rolls or one of his rune rolls, which biases it to the fact where if he's going into basically any elite infantry in the game, the chances of him killing more than 3 is actually very, very low. And when you realize that, wait a second, how's he going to score points? One Satan just doesn't do it. Now, I hear everyone screaming at me, but Jonathan, there's another entire 1,500 points of Necrons behind him that's coming at you. I completely understand that. The point I am trying to make you think about right now, though, is what is the Satan actually good at? Because it's not that great at killing things when you put it relative to the amounts of points that it cost. The amount of points that it's cost and its deliverability are actually quite high and quite low, respectively. Delivering it is not the easiest thing. It is a monster. It can't move through walls. It's faster, for sure, and it does have deep strike, but you have the ability to screen, and if you're a good Warhammer player, you're going to be screaming. And its OC is actually kind of dog water for how many points it costs. It's actually kind of dog water for how many points it costs. If there is a Satan touching the objective, I can run a 70-point squad of Space Marine scouts on that objective and deny the Necrons player that objective. Right off the bat, one thing that should be going through your mind is light bulbs. If you can't kill Satan, which every single army in the game can kill one Satan, we'll go through that a little bit later. But if you can't kill Satan, you can just make it so they don't score points. Because how do you win Warhammer 40,000? The reality is that when we play Warhammer 40,000, the way we win is that we score 1 victory point more than our opponents. So we have to figure out how to play Warhammer 40,000 effectively. That's the key. That's the freaking key. Okay? All right, so this is the Nightbringer. This is him. For 315 points, OC4. There's a lot of units that are going to be out OCing him, even with his 14 attacks, hitting on twos, winning on twos against a 20-man squad of guardsmen. Guess what? He's not chewing through that 20-man squad of guardsmen. So if you were to hit that 20-man squad of guardsmen, well, okay, so that 20-man squad of guardsmen is going to survive with 8-ish models, 9-ish models. He'll roll A1 to hit, A1 to wound here or there. And now you out OC him. So you're going to score in your turn, and then you're just going to fall back, and you're going to stand outside of a few inches of him and so that in his turn, he also doesn't score his primary. So you're still going to get the primary game. So one of the first things that we need to really recognize against your Satans is that you win the primary game. Okay, so let's talk about some of these other Satan. I just want to see if there's any issues here that we're not able to really solve. So let's look at the Void Dragon. Void Dragon is 310 points or 330 points in the Pantheon of Woe, where he can force a vehicle to take a leadership test when they're within line of sight, and it can cause hit and wound modifiers to the vehicle based off of whether or not they pass it. So it's the exact same defensive profile and movement profile as the Nightbringer, but he's got some better anti-stuff shooting. So when you look at his shooting, he's got range 12, anti-vehicle 2-up, D3 shots, hits on 2s, strength 8, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage. So his spear is actually quite good, but it has to be very close. It's a 12-inch gun. And then he's got the Voltaic Sporm, which is a blast with sustained hits 2, D6 plus 3 shots, hits on 2s, strength 7, AP 1, damage 2. AP 1 on anything in this game, it might as well be AP 0 because you're going to have cover. If you don't have cover, you position poorly. Get yourself some cover. Defensive profile is exactly the same. And then his ability is going to be the Master of Absorption. At the start of your shooting phase, you get to select one vehicle unit within 12 inches and roll a d6. On a 2-up, that model suffers D3 mortals, and this model heals. Okay. So we're seeing something really similar here. Now let's look at this melee profile. 5 attacks, strength hits on 2s, strength 12, AP 4, D6 plus 2 damage. Very, very similar to the Nightbringer. The difference being it's 5 attacks instead of 6, and it's strength 12 instead of 14, and it's anti-vehicle 2-up as opposed to being devastating wounds. But it's a very similar strike, and its sweep profile is a little bit less good. So it's going to be 10 attacks instead of 14, and it's going to be AP 1 instead of AP 2. And it does have a few extra attacks in there. So let's identify what is the problem that this Satan presents us with. Is its melee really a problem? Is that a melee profile that we haven't seen elsewhere, that we haven't already figured out how to play against in Warhammer? Because if you're telling me that you've never seen this melee profile and you've never had to deal with it, you're probably brand new. So its melee really isn't a problem. Is it shooting a problem? A 12-inch and an 18-inch range gun for 310-ish plus points. It's really not. That shooting is decent. It's decent shooting. It can definitely surprise someone, but it's not really an issue. So that's not the problem. How about its OC? Is its OC the problem? No, its OC is absolutely not the problem. So what the problem is that you're not going to kill it easily, and it can heal if you try to kill it. It's the exact same problem that the Nightbringer presents you with. The real problem is that it's really, really hard to kill. And you're going to see a theme here, and I'm leading up to a big point here. So Deceiver, 285 points. In the Pantheon of Woe, you're going to add 40 points to him for the Vectora. Now, this actually creates a little bit of a different issue than what the other Satan actually give you. So he only moves 8 instead of the 10, so he's a little bit slower. But he has some very, very different weapons. So his Cosmic Insanity, which is anti-character 4-up, devastating wounds and precision, within 18 inches, this guy can fairly reliably just kill a leader. So he presents a little bit of a different problem than the other Satan has. He has the ability to snipe out characters, and actually I think the Deceiver is quite decent. He also got a little bit of a glow up in his melee attacks, as he went to 8 attacks at strength 10, AP 3, damage 3. So this guy is actually a little bit of a more issue, and he has got that sweet, sweet stealth keyword, which means he's even harder to kill if you're trying to kill these things with ranged shooting. His ability is just a redeploy, which is generally not particularly useful in 10th edition. But in Pantheon of Woe, when he gets that Vectora, that's another issue. Suddenly he has a 12-inch bubble off of his 40mm base that is saying all stratagems cost a bonus CP. So that is actually a big issue. So one of the things that I'm actually weirdly in right now is I think the Deceiver is one of the biggest issues of all the Satan. He is cheaper. As we've already discussed, the damage profile that your Satan put out really isn't the biggest deal. So he's got plenty of damage to be a menace. Even though he doesn't hit quite as hard as the Nightbringer or even the Void Dragon, he still does plenty of damage. He still threatens your elite infantry. As a matter of fact, he threatens your elite infantry better than the Void Dragon and the Nightbringer do. And in this current meta, elite infantry are the things that you got to be able to kill. And he's got this anti-character devastating wound precision weapon that can really wreak havoc upon a lot of infantry units that are reliant on their 4 wound, 5 wound, even 6 wound characters. So he actually does present a little bit of a different problem because he will do some damage that you're not prepared for. Okay, and then lastly, we've got the Transcendent Satan, and I think this is probably the least effective of all of the Satan right now. So exact same defensive profile, moves 8 like the Deceiver. He's got a decent shooting weapon, 6 attacks at sustained hits 1, strength 8, AP 2 damage 2, and then his melee is going to be also sustained hits 1, strength 10, AP 3 damage D6. So roughly the same profile as what the Deceiver is, with a little bit better shooting. He doesn't have the stealth, he doesn't have the precision on him. And his ability is that he can teleport when he advances, which means that he can't charge after that. And if you're in the Pantheon of Well, you add the 25 points to him. That'll give him a 6-inch teleport, but no charge. So that's the Transcendent Satan. So here we go. How do we deal with these freaking Satan? First thing that we recognize is that we're not going to try to one-tap units that are specifically designed to not be one-tapped. We are now thinking combinations. When you throw grenades at a Satan, expect 2 damage to come out of it instead of 3, because they have that 5-up Feel No Pain. That 5-up Feel No Pain is going to cut approximately a third of the mortal wounds that you put into them. So we know that we still love putting mortal wounds into these guys because they're only cutting your mortal wounds by a third versus -1 damage and a 4-up invulnerable save and then cutting it in a third. So it's much more effective to still do mortal wounds even though they have that Feel No Pain. So tank shocks, grenades, these are ways to get damage on these dudes early on. If you have to kill this, you gotta recognize it's gonna be a combination. I have killed this thing with my Tyranids. I have killed these things already with Orcs. Well, Orcs I actually can one-tap it with. I've killed these things with World Eaters already. There is not a single army in the game that you cannot kill a Satan with. Now, a lot of people say, yes, I can kill a Satan, but what am I going to do about the other 2 or the other 3? Well, let me present you with a scenario here. If you have OC4 on these freaking Satan, you just deny them primary. These guys are really expensive. If your opponent is taking 3 Satan, that is half his army. That is literally half his army. So at that point, what you do is you ignore the Satan, you murder the rest of the Necrons, and you hold primary and you deny primary. What you have to do is you have to shift your brain. You got to shift your brain away from this concept of kill, kill, kill. You have to kill, you have to kill, you have to kill. You don't have to kill to deal with a threat. What you got to do is score more victory points than your opponent. With an OC of 4, your opponent can't just put 1 Satan on each objective and be like, come at me, bro. Because all you got to do is just focus fire 1 of Satan down, and every single army, I will not hear, like, I'll hear it, and I'll just tell you exactly that you're very wrong. Every single army can kill 1 Satan with combinations. If he puts 1 Satan on each objective, you're just going to focus fire down Satan. Meanwhile, you're going to have your forces going into the backlines, killing the rest of the Necrons, while you ignore the other Satan. So what he really is going to have to do is, if he really wants to contest an objective with Satan, he's going to have to do one of 2 things. 1, he's going to have 2 Satan on an objective, or he's going to have the Satan and other Necron forces. If he does Satan and other Necron forces, you kill the other Necron forces, tie the Satan up. If he puts 2 Satan together on one objective, let him have that objective, go grab the other 2. It really does get down to that simple. Let me tell you a really, really good example of this, okay? You don't have to kill a unit to deal with the problem. When I was at the World Championships, I was in an Imperial Guard match. I won the game because my opponent had a Rogodorn that had moved fairly far up. And in turn 2, I advanced and charged Dante. I was running the Blood Angels. And I charged into this Rogodorn. And instead of focusing on this Rogodorn, I also spread out and tagged 2 other tank commanders. When I did this, I also had advanced forward all of my tanks. I was running what I called the Bloody Road, which is a tank-heavy Blood Angels army. Right out of line of sight of all of my opponent's shooting, except for like the Rogodorn and one of the tank commanders. And so what I did is I presented my opponent with a problem. I didn't kill anything. I didn't kill the Rogodorn, didn't kill any of the tank commanders. I presented my opponent with a conundrum. He could either A, stay in combat with Dante, shoot into Dante, hope he kills Dante because he can't shoot his blast into combat, and he'll shoot his blast into my tanks, but that's bad because then he'll be at -1 to hit, all these things, and it's not going to be enough to kill my tanks. Or what he can do is he can fall back from Dante, then bring his other tanks up to shoot my tanks. But the reason why he couldn't do both was because his Rogodorn and his Leman Russes were blocking the movement of his other tanks that were behind him. So he couldn't get line of sight with the rest of his army unless he fell back. So by putting him in this position, I put him into a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. I killed nothing, but I forced his hand into either A, killing the squad that he was in melee with, or B, falling back and killing all of my tanks. Either way, I had a doomsday device that was ready to be dropped on him, and he wasn't going to be able to destroy enough of my army, and I just had the game in the bag. So what you always want to do is you want to be looking for these all-win scenarios. It's not a no-win scenario, it's an all-win scenario. So back to my client who was asking me, do we need to put Stern Guard into a Dark Angels list to actually be able to kill these Satan? The answer is absolutely no. No, we do not. What we got to be able to do is we got to figure out, okay, when we have to kill one Satan, what is the combination that we actually have to put together to make sure that we kill that one Satan? And as long as you come up with that one combination, you're going to be fine. If I'm playing Tyranids, if I'm playing Subterranean Assault, I can bring up 2 Molochs. I can cause a few more to wound. 3 Molochs. I can cause a few more to wounds. I can have a Screamer Killer drop out of the 6 inches, shoot it, battle shock it, have a Neurolictor nearby, so the rest of my army is now +1 to wound. Then teleport my 6 Zone Thropes with a Neurotyrant, and I can blast it with sustained hits, lethal rerolling 1s to hit, hitting on 2s, freaking las cannons that are wounding on 2s that are all d6 +1 damage. Of course, the Satan makes them -1 damage. That'll kill this freaking Satan. And if all of that combination leaves the Satan on 1 or 2 wounds, here comes a charge of my hyper-adapted Raveners that are now getting twin-linked anti-monster vehicle 5-up that will get through the last 1 or 2 wounds that are on this model. There is a combination for absolutely everything. And I hear people already typing in the comments and they're saying, yeah, but your opponent can counter you. You're correct. Your opponent can try to counter you. But what you have to do is you have to force your opponent to counter you bringing your combo. If you don't force your opponents to counter the combos that you are bringing in, then they're going to win automatically. So Warhammer is a game of countering counters. You need to force your opponents to provide the correct counters to your counterplay. That is the way it works. So what we have to do is you have to start the game by saying, what is the problem the Satan actually presents to you? Is it too killy? Is it just going to stand on objective and score primary? Because it won't, right? Its OC is too low. You're going to out OC it. It can't just stay on the objective and score primary. So that's not a problem. Is it that it's too tough to kill? That could legit be the problem that the Satan presents. I wouldn't argue that. It's potential that there are too many things that you're going to be able to have to deal with to be able to deal with the Satan, because everyone can focus fire down one Satan, but if your opponent has one Satan here and the rest of his army over there, you might be better off just going and killing the rest of his army and avoiding the Satan. Give him his one objective. You might just be better off using a 40-point unit of Gretchen or a 60-point unit of Imperial Guardsmen to run out and just out-OC the Satan on the objective. These are the things that you have to do. You have to shift your mindset from killing to scoring more victory points than your opponents. And if you're focused on scoring primary and denying primary, you're going to be in a great position with Satan. I have had no trouble with these guys yet. I absolutely recognize that some of you guys will occasionally run into the Pantheon of Woe stat check where they just run 4 Satans at you. That could be an issue. I'm not going to lie. But the reality is you can still focus fire one of those Satans. Then he's going to have 2 of his Satans onto another objective to deny it. If he doesn't, and he's just throwing all 4 Satans into your face, then he's going to be holding those objectives with really not that many points of Necrons. Go kill those Necrons, ignore the Satans until later, and deal with them one at a time later. That's the way you have to look at these things. Very, very important. These are the common complaints I hear from people, guys. I hear, oh, they're too tough. I can't kill more than 1 a turn. Great, don't kill more than 1 a turn. Kill 1 a turn, deal with the others without killing them. Out-OC them, for example. Now it has Deep Strike, and it's faster, so I can't avoid it. Listen, you have to screen Deep Strike in every single game of Warhammer 40,000 you play. You just have to. You have to move block in every single game of Warhammer 40k. Yeah, but it flies. You can't move block. Yes, you can. You can body block. You can block where it can land, and you know where it's going to be moving because monsters can't move through walls, so you know the path that it has to take. They hit unreasonably hard. They really don't. When you actually run the math on these things, they don't hit all that hard. A Nightbringer Satan, he's got 6 attacks. That means he's going to miss 1 because he's going to hit 5 times. On 6 dice, you'll roll 1-1. On 5 attacks, if he's hitting you, and let's say he's hitting a vehicle and he's winning on 3s, he's going to drop 1. That's going to be 3 or maybe 4 that go through. If you have a 4 invulnerable save, you've passed 2 statistically. It's 2d6 plus 4 damage. Spend a CP, reroll the next one. He doesn't kill the vehicle. Now, of course, he can get lucky and things aren't always going to go mathematically perfectly neat. But if you have any modifiers, put a -1 to hit modifier on them. That's a big problem. Put a -1 to wound modifier on them. That's a big deal. All of these things stack up. Just decrease their efficiency, and then you'll be totally fine. Everyone here has dealt with the damage that Satans can put out in the form of other more efficient units in Warhammer 40,000. So none of these complaints are strictly true. They're only true if you're really limiting yourself. And here on Happy Corrupting Wargaming, we don't limit ourselves. We expand our brains on how to deal with these things. Get it in your mind. What are units that are that are specifically designed to deny your opponent's primary? What's going to be holding your primary? What cares if a Satan charges it? What doesn't care if a Satan charges it? When you answer these questions, you're going to have no freaking problem with the Satan. If you are Space Marines and you're like, oh, I just can't charge it because it's going to interrupt and blah, blah, blah. Well, hopefully you have Fight on Death to counter that. You throw grenades. Hopefully you have some devastating wounds that you put out into it first. If you're running, if you're a Salamanders player out there, you got the Champion of Freaking Humanity enhancement that will allow Blade Guard veterans that are led by Adrix Agatone to just one-tap a Satan. If you're playing Eldar, you could be playing Aspect Host, ignore modifiers, and then even give yourself sustained hits with your 10 Fire Dragons, and it can even be on crits on 5s if you have Lickus in there. You can easily one-tap these Satan. So you actually do have units that are still in the game that can one-tap them, but you don't have to because you can combo it. Always combo it. Think you'll need 3, 4, 5 activations. When it's time to kill a Satan, kill that Satan. Do nothing else. Guys, with this was my guide on to how to handle Satan. If you listen to me, if you put these things into use, you're going to be fine. That doesn't mean that you'll never have some frustrations. Of course, there will always be the turn where the Satan just makes every single invuln. Like, of course, that'll happen. But you're going to have a net positive result against these guys, and you're going to be totally fine. So, if you don't listen to me, I guess you're just going to suffer. But with that, have a great day. All right, crump up. Bye-bye.